So, The Blackening is a horror comedy in which the entire central cast is black people. And the marketing has been keen to point out that, this is a horror film that wants to poke fun of that old horror cliche about how the black people die first. Well, as the poster has revealed for this film, you can't kill us all first if it's all black people, then what? So I was I was trying to think about what type of film this would be. Was it going to lead more towards horror satire or more horror parody? And it kind of ends up being a cocktail of both. It starts off kind of on that satirical note by having a familiar setup. It's a cabin in the woods. It's far off in in the woods, and it's in the darkness. It's in a fairly unpopulated area, which is perfect opportunity for a killer to strike. So when the killer first strikes, the killer plays a little bit of a game and asks the first victims, can you name a film in which the black people survive? And the answer they gave is Scream 2, which, if you're familiar with your horror movie knowledge, the black people are the first to die in Scream 2. So, yeah, so it has that Scream element about characters who are fairly familiar with horror movies, but at the same time making all the familiar mistakes. And there's a bit more of that throughout the film, but also more of a silliness to try to play up on those tropes and kind of basically have a bit of gallows humor to it. So you have a group of friends who are meeting up for a reunion in the woods, and you get to know a whole bunch of them and get to love them a lot before the killer comes back into the picture, which is great. Usually, if you didn't like the characters, this would be the most boring part of the film because you're a little bit edgy. You're like, oh god, when are they going to get to the kills? I don't really care about these characters. I can't wait for them to get to be killed off. And here you get to know and like enough of the characters. You get to know Lisa and the fact that she's debating whether she wants to get back together with her ex. You have Allison, who feels a little bit out of place for being mixed race among her friends who keep bringing it up all the time. You have Dwayne, who is just a little bit of a mild party animal. He's a bit they establish him as being a little bit more introspective and sensitive. But if you get the right drugs in him at the right time, he can be all about partying. He's one of those those party goers who needs drugs to actually turn on and turn up a party to be more fun. They also bring up the ex-boyfriend is Namandi, who they establish as being actually from Africa for his name. And he's played up as being this person who's a bit unfaithful, a bit untrustworthy, but he's trying to get his life together. So the other characters don't really trust him all that much, but they're very much on the fence. Even Lisa's I don't know if I really want to get back together with him, but I don't know, I got stuff to patch up. So there's a little bit, so you have some romantic tension going on there. You also have King, who's the more aggressive party animal. If Dwayne is the character who, needs a little something for the party to get started, King is the person who will supply it. But not well. King's plans for starting off, the reunion for partying is to make this drink that combines way too much vodka with way too much Kool-Aid. and of course, everyone's this is going to give you diabetes. Do not drink this. And everyone who takes it's oh, it's the worst thing ever. And then more of a drunk partier is Shanika, who's a lot more eccentric, a lot more the fun, the fun girl who immediately encouraged everyone to get into the party. And then kind of balancing out the rest of the friends is kind of a little bit of the outsider is Clifton, who is kind of the very the nerdy black friend who really does kind of play up that Urkel vibe. It gets to an absurd degree with how geeky they try to make this guy, to the point where you almost feel bad for him. You almost do. So as they reconnect and they have a little bit of fun partying, They notice that weird things start happening in the house. The doors start locking. There's something strange in the basement. And there's this racist board game down in the basement that forces them to play this game of trying to determine how black they are and killing them off if they don't answer correctly. So it's and this leads, of course, it has like an interesting aspect of like having, you know, like this racial allegory over everything, but at the same time, it's also just funny for like the gallows humor that comes about, because like at the same time, like, you know, it's so much shocking that, you know, they're forced to play this game, but at the same time, it's funny for how, like, you know, like they get really, you know, proud of themselves that they know this stuff, and then feel terrible about themselves when they don't know this stuff that they feel that they should know as black people. It's the one thing that this made me think of was that there's an episode of Martin in which they try to like call the cops and try to like convince the cops that they're white so that they'll be taken seriously, and it leads to this kind of like Family Feud style game of trying to prove to the cops that they're white. The Blackening's entire like first act with the killer is like the complete opposite of that. It's this entire black group of friends trying to prove to a killer that they are black by knowing stuff like how many Aunt Vivs there were on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and knowing like all the verses of the Black National Anthem. And then like I don't want to reveal all the questions here, but there's a beautifully hilarious punchline to the question, name 5 black actors from Friends, which is which has like the best punchline, so I don't want to ruin it here. But yeah, like the humor here is like, it's fast and vicious to the point where it's just like, you know, like there's a point in the third act where the film kind of just like settles for being less of a satire and more of like a parody that wants to kind of like, you know, like be more silly, and also kind of like gut the typical horror tropes that you would expect for who would be the killer in this scenario and who not to trust in these situations. And by that point in the film, like it feels like it would get stale and that you wouldn't be as into it. But the fact that this cast works so well, like they have amazing chemistry playing off of each other, and they know how to deliver these lines in a way that just makes you laugh so hard that like at that point this is like, you know what, if the film wants to like, you know, wrap it up in this way, like there is a twist to who the true killer is here, but about midway through you can kind of see it coming with how it's framed here. But in terms of the humor here, like it doesn't err on like the safe side. It goes for the, like I said, it's gallows humor, so it directly goes for like, you know, humor based around like race and politics and cultural trends, and it does not hold anything back. Like it is incredibly gutsy what they want, the type of humor they want to evoke in this film. Like at one point, like one of the funniest bits is where the killer gives them a choice of like, send out a person to die, and it has to be the person who is the least black among you. So the killer is trying to pit everyone against each other by like determining how black they are and what they know. And it's weird how they debate, like, you know, like they want to try to like live, so they try to like offer excuses about how they're not that black. And at one point, like, I won't reveal which character, but one of them like gives like the one response where they're just like, okay, you need to go, which is like one of them says like I you know, I guess I'm not that black. I mean, I voted for Trump twice, and they're like, oh, you gotta, we don't even care if you're not black. You gotta, and there's a lot of like weird humor like that. Like there's also very well, it's not really weird humor, it's more like topical humor, but there is very knowing humor about like the horror genre. Like at one point, they're not quite sure if they want to place their trust in the local police, who you know, who's called Officer White, played by Diedrich Bader. They're not quite sure if they should trust this guy because, like, you know, there's a killer out in the woods. They don't know, like, he's like a stranger to them, but like Bader's performance, like he tries to put on like this, you know, he tries to like prove that, like, you know, he's an ally, but they're still kind of like, I don't know, like, because these are people who have seen like Jordan Peele's like Get Out, so they're just kind of like, I don't know, I've seen Get Out. Like, if this guy says like I voted for Obama twice, we don't know if we can trust him. And there's even like little sentiments of that the officer will stay where like that the officer will say where like the group is like, I don't know if we should put down our weapons with this guy. Maybe I don't know. No, wait, no. That I'm not sure if we can trust him. So there's kind of an interesting like play about like, you know, like I said, it has like that Scream aspect of like, you know, determining who to trust in a horror movie, and the characters here are fairly aware of horror movie tropes where they're just like, let's err on the cautious side. And sometimes they're right to be cautious and it does save them, and other times it doesn't. Like they're a little bit too cautious and having like, you know, their sense of like trust and safety more informed by you know, like by media and culture and stuff like that it blows up in their faces here. So it's very much, you know, there's a lot of moments here where I was just laughing so hard. This is definitely one of those kind of like horror films that is great to see with like a crowd. So if you are going to see this, I would say like see it in the theater, and if you don't, watch it with a group, because it's a lot of fun on that level. And also, like, I probably should have mentioned this from the get-go, but like the group is gathering together for a reunion to celebrate Juneteenth, and there's a bit of humor they play up with that as well. So it's just I will say this though, if you're going into this film and expecting it to be like an ultra gory, you know, typical type of horror film in that capacity, you're going to be let down. However, if you like to see a horror comedy that can poke fun at the genre, but also still, you know, kind of have like its own brand of satire to it, this film really works. Like, I mean, in terms of like a horror or comedy, this definitely airs more on the side of like comedy, only because I was laughing so hard at this, and like the back and forth between the characters is brilliant. The way they determine what they're supposed to do in a house where the power gets shut off and the doors are locked and they're being stalked by killers outside and they got crossbows and voice changers, and just debating what they should do in every scenario and bickering and having just absolutely hilarious conversations. Like at one point they're bickering about what type of music they know, and they bring up the O'Reilly Auto Parts theme song, and they kind of like bitterly sing it to each other because like they just can't help themselves. So just like wonderful moments like that make the third act, which kind of like settles for like the twist that you would expect here, and not to mention like the absurdity of how Clifton is framed. It kind of works for those laughs. Like I mean, like I said, a great cast can save a, you know, like a fairly like routine or lukewarm plot. And here, I feel like the writing is good, but I feel like it only comes together as well as it does here just because it's so damn funny. It is so hilarious watching everyone, you know, everyone, like, I'll just go down the whole cast here. Like, Grace Byers, Jermaine Fowler, even though Jermaine Fowler is playing it up way too much as Clifton, I think he does a great job. Melvin Gregg is great as kind of like King, as like a more grounded person in all this. Ex Mayo as Shanika is hilarious for like the lines that she doles out here. Dwayne Perkins as Dwayne, also a lot of fun to the party. Antion Robertson as Lisa is great for like kind of like, it feels like she could, you know, it almost feels like she's kind of like playing up a little bit more of like the straight romantic drama, even though she does have a lot of funny lines in here as well. She sells that performance to make you believe that she and Namandi would have a relationship. Namandi, played by Cinqua Walls, I believe it is. Great performance there. Like, and just like just the way that like King tries to sell everyone on like his Kool-Aid drink is just beautiful, thanks to Melvin Gregg's performance. And then you have what was it name, like Jay Farrow as Sean. As Sean, and Yvonne Orji as Morgan, who play the opening characters. Don't have a lot of screen time, but they have decent back and forth for the little screen time that they have here. And of course, Diedrich Bader is always funny. Just Diedrich Bader has this natural element to just play it straight, and that's all you need to do. And he does it here beautifully. To like sell his character as someone you're not quite sure if you could trust, and also someone who's just like genuinely funny on a dry level here. So everything in this film just kind of like fires on all cylinders here in terms of like the comedy. And I feel like, hey, if you're gonna lean into like the hilarious aspects of the scenario, you got to go in hard. You got to sell those jokes. They can't just be like like typical, semi-topical jokes and like kind of like safe humors, like, or here's like a fart joke here or a drug joke there. The film never settles that easily. Like, to be fair, there are some drug jokes here, especially in the third act, where one of them is on Adderall. There are some boozy jokes, and the bulk of all the comedy here, especially because it plays into the big twist here, the bulk of the comedy is all about race. And if you're up on that, if you like that type of humor, this will hit it out of the park for you. And just the fact that this film has guts with the type of comedy that it's trying to evoke here, like it never feels like it's falling back on easy laughs. It works so well. I had a blast watching this. It is absolutely a film you need to watch with a crowd. So yeah, The Blackening is a hoot. That sounds too silly. I don't care. The Blackening is fun, people. It's fun. It's fun and hilarious.